Hey everyone, what's going on? Back here today with another video. This is actually another response video which I promised last week. So I'm doing a response to Dennis from Analog Archives. He's running a competition which started a couple of weeks ago, I think. That's to celebrate his achievement of 1,000 subscribers. So congratulations, Dennis, really well deserved. If you haven't checked out his channel, definitely do so. It's really interesting and he's a cool guy. I think someone else commented, I think it was Matt, saying like when you watch his videos, it's like you're sitting in the basement with him having a conversation. So it's very personalized and he shows a lot of thrash metal, extreme metal, like black and death metal. So a lot of stuff that I like. And he also has a great taste in movies. So we'll get on to that later on in this video. So what he's done for this competition, and before I get into that, so I'll just say, definitely check out his channel and subscribe if you haven't, because it's definitely worth it. And once again, congratulations, Dennis. So getting into the competition for today, he's asked a series of questions that we respond to, obviously, and they're really interesting. So I thought, yeah, I've got to jump on this. And in relation to my answers, I have quite a lot to show today. So I'm not going to babble in too much detail, as I may normally do, but we'll see how it goes. So I'm just going to address the questions one by one, and we'll get straight into it because there's a lot to see. Okay, so the first question in the thread is, tell me about some of your favorite shows or concerts and why. So I'm just going to go through these very quickly. And by the way, I may have answered some of these questions in other videos, but still I'm addressing them today. So just running through quickly, one of my favorites ever was the Alice Cooper, the Trash Tour in 1990. Like, I was only 11 years old, so that was the first heavy metal related concert I ever went to with my parents and my brother and a friend. And you know how Alice Cooper is very theatrical and gory and full of fun as a show, so I'll just never forget that as my first major show when I was a kid. And I think that was the gateway to a lot of, subsequent musical styles that I'd get into. So yeah, it kind of makes sense. So that's the first one, Alice Cooper, 1990. Second noteworthy one for me as a big concert was Rollins Band, also playing in Sydney, in 1994. Henry Rollins, the former vocalist of Black Flag, his solo band. That was just so memorable to me because it was such an energetic show, just packed full of people, all these punk fans in Black Flag t-shirts and, people with mohawks and everything. And that was sort of part of that, the rise of, sort of like alternative metal, indie music was really popular in the mid-90s, so it was sort of part of that scene, even though it wasn't indie music. But so it was a really mixed crowd there, and I just remember the show was so energetic and intense, like great charismatic performances from everyone in the band. And I remember like people were just stage diving and crowd surfing the whole time, even in between songs where Henry's going, okay, this next song is about, everyone's just cheering and passing people over the crowd. So it was just an electric show, really, so unforgettable. So Rollins Band, Wait Tour, 1994. Then another very memorable concert for me was Cannibal Corpse. Again, seeing them in Sydney in 1995. I'm really happy that I saw them in the early days. This was when Chris Barnes was still the vocalist in the band, and it was the Bleeding tour. So the Bleeding came out in 1994, so this show was 1995. And I remember at that time I was only 16 years old, and when I saw them on stage, the first song they played, just refreshing my screen, first song they played was Staring Through the Eyes of the Dead. And I remember like Chris had all his hair in his face and the band was playing, and I was just in awe, like, I can't believe I'm actually seeing this. So it was a real thrill to see that. And because at that time they only had 4 albums out, and people will know this, like Canyon mentioned this in a recent video, like all of Cannibal Corpse's like first 4 or 5 albums, they sounded very different to each other. So it was just a treat to hear all those really early songs. And that's it in that one show. And it was fantastic, that show. It was great. It was at this pub in Sydney, and they let people get up on the stage and stage dive and everything. It was just wild and a ton of fun, and that really cemented my loyalty to death metal and that kind of music, that show. So very influential. Another great show, a highlight show for me, was Wacken in the year 2000, so hard to believe, 22 years ago, and that was in the good old days when it was an underground festival and didn't sell out in fucking 2 seconds like it does these days. But yeah, it was underground, not so many people, but I met a lot of cool people at that show, both from Germany and abroad, like some friends from Belgium, and it was just, yeah, an eye-opening experience for me, because being from Australia, that they never had anything like that there, and it was just to see all these underground black and death metal bands and various other bands all in one place, and like some of my favorite bands of all time. Even at that time, it was a thrill. Like, I won't mention all of the bands I saw, but like some included like some of my favorites: Marduk, Dark Funeral, Immortal. Who else played? Entombed. Like, it was just, you know, a smorgasbord of great bands. So like that was fantastic. Wacken 2000. I also mentioned this recently, the Rebirth of Dissection tour in 1994. I saw that show in Belgium. Some friends from Belgium invited me, and you know, this was just after the band had reunited after what had happened with John and everything. And that was, I think, their final tour, you know, because of what happened later on. You know, John committed suicide a couple of years later. But it was, you know, Dissection is a melodic black death metal band, and really atmospheric to see this band live. And like I did mention in the Dissection video I made, like I would certainly not condone what he did, and I don't glorify it at all, like as a person, but I was just a fan of the music, you know. So great to see. So Dissection, Rebirth of Dissection tour in 2004. Then another great show for me was Grasspop 2015. That was so in Belgium, Dessel, Belgium, and again, the reason I went to that festival is because it had all of my favorite bands, basically like big time bands, in the one festival. And again, there were so many I saw, like some examples: Cannibal Corpse, Marduk, Scorpions. I'm just rattling them off as I go. Psy, Kiss, Judas Priest, Alice Cooper. Oh, so many others. Amorphous, Ensiferum, Corpiclani. And remember, I mentioned that was when I first heard Corpiclani for the first time, and that sealed the deal for me as a fan, because I'd never seen sort of like this kind of folky metal performed live where people were actually dancing. So it was an eye-opening experience as well. Yeah, so that was just a brilliant show. And then most recently, Steelfest 2022. So this year, some of you will know that I went over to Norway and Finland. So Steelfest takes place in a town called Hyvinkää in Finland, about an hour outside Helsinki. And again, just a brilliant show, like so many black metal bands, which I really liked. A lot of Finnish black metal bands as well, because it was in Finland. Like some examples being Azazel, Horner, Sargeist, War Moon Lord. Oh, and you know, a lot of international bands as well, like Destroyer 666. You know, I'll have to check the flyers, but like so many more. But like it was just every 4 days of this festival, and it was, you know, meeting friends and drinking there. And on that topic, I met a couple of YouTubers for the first time in real life, so that was really exciting. Two of them being Nick, so Motley Crue Forever, or Wings of Sorrow, and also Norwegian Black Cult from Estonia. So it was really cool to meet those guys in person, and they were really nice guys. And I also met a lot of Finnish fans and people from all over the world. So even what I remember about that festival was that it was freezing cold, and so, you know, you're drinking cans of beer just to stay warm. You know, like it was good, but like brilliant atmosphere. And it was in this old wool factory where it was just so bleak, but it suited the atmosphere perfectly. So really good venue as well. And another thing memorable about that festival for me was I was staying, so the festival was in a place called Hyvinkää, and then there was a town called Riihimäki, and then I was staying in a town called Ryttälä, and it was about 28 kilometers away on the train. But at night, the trains terminated at the middle town, which was Riihimäki, or if you didn't get it in time, maybe you missed the train completely. So the first night, it was Destroyer 666 playing, and they kept playing and playing, and I didn't want to miss one single song, so I ended up missing the train. Fortunately, that night the train took me as far as Riihimäki, so 14 kilometers, but I had to walk the remaining 14 kilometers home, and it was really atmospheric because I was in total isolation. It was dark, it was cold, and I was walking through these dead tree forests and farmland. Yeah, like at the time I was pissed off, but it was an amazing experience, like total solitude. And believe it or not, the next night, I forgot to mention the headlining band was Satanic Warmaster, so again, a band that I'm a really big fan of. And same thing happened, believe it or not, but it was even worse the second night because the train didn't even go as far as Riihimäki, so it was like, I don't know what happened. It was, so I would have had a 28 kilometer walk, or they said you can wait 2 hours for the next train. And I was going, 2 hours, what am I going to do for the next 2 hours? And then I looked over, there was this railway station pub, 2 hours to wait, and I was sort of like, and I went into this pub, and there are all these Finnish people really drunk and singing karaoke, so that was an interesting cultural experience. And then the train took me to Riihimäki, and I had to walk the remaining 14 kilometers once again to Rutila in the freezing cold. So yeah, very memorable experience for a lot of reasons. So there's some of my favorite festivals. Now, something eventful that, the next question is, tell me something eventful that happened at a show or concert. So this is from the Big Day Out 1995. That was a famous festival in Australia where it was a lot of alternative and indie bands, but also punk bands and sometimes metal bands. But when this was 1995, so again I was 16 years old, but Silverchair actually played at that show, and at the time they were sort of, they got a bad rap from a lot of people because everyone said, oh, they're just, you know, teenagers being famous. But I think the people saying that were also their age, so maybe they were just jealous or something. But it was quite funny that when they played a set on a smaller stage, yet the place got completely packed because all these people, you know, maybe were saying they were too cool, but everyone went to see them anyway. And they actually played a really good set. Like you know, they've always been accused of being like a bit of a Nirvana ripoff, but I think it's more of a metal version. But anyway, it was a good performance. But something memorable and really scary that happened in that show is that, you know, at these stadiums they have these lamp posts, like industrial sized lamp posts, like 20 or 30 meters high or something, and they have these rungs or pegs on the side for maintenance and repair people only to climb. Well, someone in the audience decided to climb up one of those lampposts in the middle of the set, and it scares me to even think about it at this day. So he climbed all the way up to the top, like it must have been 20 meters, something like that, and it sort of detracted everyone's attention from the show, and people were looking over going, what the hell, that is insane. And it was really scary. I couldn't look like I was there, and I think even the band was playing going, you know, what the hell. But he climbed up, oh, it pains me to even talk about it, to the top of the lamppost, and then he climbed out on the lamppost, and I think he started even swinging on it, and thankfully I think he didn't fall, not to my knowledge because I would have known about it, but I assume that he eventually got down and got arrested or something. But it was just really scary because it looked very dangerous, and I feared for his safety. I'm sure a lot of people did. So memorable in a scary way, but like I'll never forget it. All right, so talking about the next question then, I'm just moving through this quickly because I don't want to take up too much of your valuable time. So the next question is, tell me about some other music you listen to besides metal and some examples. Okay, so yeah, I would say that I listen to metal and hard rock, you know, those kind of genres, like 90% of the time, maybe even more, like 95% of the time. But, you know, there's some other genres that I enjoy, so I'm just going to go through this quickly and bear with me. So some of you may know that I also like some dark ambient music, so it's kind of, in a way, related to black metal and dungeon synth, so no surprise. But some examples are Goth. And by the way, you know, this is the Norwegian German duo of the two witches, and sadly one of them was killed by a terrorist in Norway last year, so rest in peace, Nebelhexa. But unbelievably atmospheric music, it's fantastic. Also, Neptune Towers, which is a dark ambient project by Fenris from Dark Throne. And another example, Sukagogoi, which is a one-person project. Not sure if it's male or female, actually, but yeah, really sort of nature-worshipping forest dark ambient. So Sukagogoi, check it out, I highly recommend this. Okay, so that's the first genre, dark ambient. Okay, so in addition to hard rock and heavy metal, I also like some classic rock, as in, you know, rock which is quite old, I suppose. So some examples there being Cream, The Doors, you know, definitely one of my favorite non-metal bands. It took me ages to appreciate this band, but I really like it for something different and really enjoy a lot of their albums. This is one of my favorites though, Waiting for the Sun. And then, of course, Led Zeppelin. Yeah, so these are some examples of classic rock bands which I enjoy. Okay, so another genre that I really enjoy, I think I've spoken about this before, is punk. And I wouldn't say I'm a big punk fan. As I said, I'm more of a metal fan, but punk, I do appreciate it. And I think a lot of metal fans do from time to time. So yeah, for something different, but aesthetically similar in some ways. But yeah, some examples of the punk bands I like, mostly the big names I have to say, like Sex Pistols, Black Flag, Dead Kennedys, The Clash, as of only recently really, but yeah, good band. The Ramones, of course, and Rancid. So yeah, from time to time I do enjoy a bit of punk, and mostly those bands. Okay, now I also like a bit of goth rock, like not a lot, but from time to time. My most favorite band is in that genre is definitely The Cure, so I own about 6 albums by them, but this one's my favorite, Faith. You know, it's that dark, dreary, gothic rock, post-punk kind of stuff. My favorite song on this album is, like, Primary is good, but also Other Voices, brilliantly fantastic song. So yeah, The Cure. All right. And, oh sorry, and the punk band which I missed out was of course The Exploited, great punk band. Okay, now, up next, I also like some alternative rock. So remember, the umbrella for that is quite big. Like, it can include the term indie, even though I don't really like that word. But, you know, as in non-mainstream rock. Some people may say it also includes grunge. I don't really like that term either, because it's like a term invented by the media. But whatever, I do like some of these bands from time to time. So I know a lot of metal fans hate grunge music, but for me, I don't mind it. I wouldn't say I listen to it all that much, but occasionally for something different, yeah, sure. And some of my favorite bands, you know, that I listen to in this genre are Alice in Chains, Nirvana, of course, yes, shock horror, and I don't care what anyone says, I do enjoy some Nirvana from time to time. I think they were perhaps maybe a little bit overhyped and everything, but at the same time, I think they deserved to become famous. But my favorite album is this one here, Bleach, which is really gritty and underground before Nevermind, when they exploded with fame. But yeah, like Nirvana. Also, Lemonheads, actually. So this is sort of alternative rock, and I know some metal fans might be aghast by this. Like, you like that? Yes, I do, actually, because it was sort of like, it's nostalgic for me from my teen years and everything. I think they wrote some really hooky, catchy, melodic alternative rock. These two are my favorites, probably, like Lovey and It's a Shame About Ray, but I also like their punk, pop punk, not as in whiny punk pop, but just like gritty punk pop, which they did before these albums. But yeah, Lemonhead's fantastic. Okay, and also some other examples. Mudhoney, a very underground band in this genre. Like, I suppose they would have been lumped in with that term grunge, except it's more sort of like garage fuzz rock. Very underrated band, like real American sound, and just so likable. Like I remember when I traveled through the US with my family when I was about 14 years old, and we were playing this when driving through Arizona. It just fitted the atmosphere perfectly. So yeah, Mudhoney. Also, this is an Australian alternative band, Scream Feeder. If you haven't checked them out, they're really different and unique if you like sort of grunge alternative music. So Scream Feeder, this album, Burn Out Your Name, is my favorite, but I like most of the stuff they've done. And speaking of an aforementioned band, Silverchair. Again, some people might be horrified by that, but like I said, the first couple of albums are like a more metal version of Nirvana, and there's a lot of influence from Black Sabbath, so it does make sense. I will admit, this one, Frog Stomp, there was the EP Tomorrow, which is based on this, and also Freak Show, the next album, but after that I kind of lost interest because it went more in a sort of radio-friendly rock direction. Like, nothing bad, but it just didn't do much for me, but yeah. So there's some of the alternative rock bands I like. Okay, and another genre which I enjoy a lot from time to time, this is very diverse as well, is pop rock. So I'll give you some examples of bands I like in that genre. So first of all, Dragon, you know, originally from New Zealand. They also spent some time in Australia, but they were famous for the song April Sun in Cuba, which is great. Also some other hits, Rain, and Get That Jive, but yeah, fantastic. I like this band, something different, Dragon. And might shock some people, but Fleetwood Mac. By the way, I own some of these albums I own on vinyl, but I'm just showing the CD version to make it quicker. Like Fleetwood Mac, it's melodic, it's chilled, and I don't like all of their stuff, but some albums. This one here, Tango in the Night, is good. Probably my favorite one is Rumours. Of course, In Excess, very catchy Australian pop rock band. This one's the definitive one. My favourite one, definitive, my favourite album by them is probably Kick. And I know some other people, I think Christian showed that one, or saying, yeah, good on you. And I know Mr. Boulder likes them too. Yeah. All right, and another Australian band, Midnight Oil. Yeah, fantastic. Like, I wouldn't say, I'm more of a greatest hits guy with this band, but some of my favourite songs like Blue Sky Mine, Beds Are Burning, that was the famous one. King of the Mountain is probably my favourite Midnight Oil song, so yeah. And a band I discovered recently, but I just love, Talking Heads. Really sort of quirky, interesting, and very catchy pop rock. So fronted by David Byrne, of course, and I became interested because I actually was introduced to his solo material by my parents years ago, and it made me curious to check Talking Heads out. But yeah, definitely recommend them. And then, so on that note, also David Byrne's solo stuff, which is kind of similar to Talking Heads, but on this particular album, which is Rey Momo, he's incorporating South American musical influences, like different styles, like samba, reggae, salsa, and everything, but just interesting to meld pop rock with South American music, so that's cool as well. Okay, so that's pop rock. And let's see, what do we have next? Oh, some more in pop rock. Now, Dennis, I remember saying one of the movies he showed in his video was the BMX movie Rad. I love that movie as well. So Dennis, you've got a great taste in films. I used to watch that movie over and over again when I was younger, and then go and ride bikes in the park, because it was such an inspirational film. But I also loved the soundtrack to that. So this is John Farnham, the Australian British pop artist, with Break the Ice. Break the Ice was the song which opened the movie Rad, and it's a fantastic song. He also sang some other songs like on that soundtrack, like Thunder in Your Heart or Heart of Thunder. Just great pop rock. And I'll just show you this one. I'm not taking most stuff out, but it comes in this cool black and white splatter vinyl German issue, which is interesting. And also, I mentioned this recently in my Desert Island albums video, Mick Jagger as well. And as I mentioned, I prefer his solo stuff to Rolling Stones, actually, because Rolling Stones is more blues oriented. I'm not against blues, but I just find this music is more interesting for me. Yeah, so Mick Jagger. Then I also like some soundtracks. I think Dennis may have mentioned this, or someone else did. I apologize for not remembering, but I love this soundtrack, Conan the Barbarian, which was composed by and conducted by Basil Polidorus. Yeah, but just really epic, majestic classical music, and it's just the perfect fitting soundtrack for this movie. It also inspired a lot of black metal bands, I think, like Graveland in particular, and also Manowar, that kind of thing. So check it out. And on that note, I really do like some classical from time to time to clean out my ears. Like some of my favorite sort of classical composers would be Handel and Orff, Karl Orff, who wrote Carmina Burana, the song O Fortuna, which is like the soundtrack to the end of the world. Just brilliant. Yeah, so some classical from time to time. And I also mentioned this in my Desert Island video, but I like some reggae music from time to time. So just one example here, Bob Marley. By the way, this is such an underrated album, Rastaman Vibration. So if you're open-minded enough to like reggae music, I recommend this album. It's great. I also heard a lot of people talking about other styles they like. A lot of people mentioned hip-hop and rap. Like, for me, not really anymore. Like, when I was really young, I grew up listening to some hip-hop and rap, and I did like it, but I'm not against it now. But to be honest, it doesn't really do much for me these days. Like, it's okay, sometimes in the right setting, but I'm not really that much of a rap fan. But there's one artist which I really enjoy, Kool Keith. He's a guy, he's a rapper. He has all these different characters and personalities for different albums. Like, one of them was Dr. Octagon, and my favorite one is actually Dr. Doom, which is like dark horror rap, like really spooky and evil. And I would actually like to get that one, Dr. Doom, First Come, First Served on vinyl. Like, really quirky, off the wall, weird lyrics, and spooky and dark and haunting. So when it's right, yeah, I like some hip hop and rap, but not much these days, I have to say. Okay, and also, by the way, with pop rock, I forgot to mention Yes. Yeah, brilliant band. And this might shock people, but I actually like some electronic music as well. It's quite funny, when people talk about dance music. It's not something you would associate with a metal channel, but it's like, I don't listen to it much anymore, but back in the day I had a friend who was really into it, and I was introduced to it, and I did like it for a while. So yeah, I heard a lot of people say who like electronic music. They say, I like anything except for trance. For me, trance is my favorite type of electronic music, especially dark trance and psytrance or psychedelic trance. So some examples of that, okay, like Psy Factor, which is a psytrance project from Russia. Also this group called Space Tribe, you know, they make these compilations with a few artists, you know, so it's like really dark, off the wall psychedelic trance, but interesting. And the same with the Psionic series, like Psionic Storm. This is another psytrance compilation. They have several ones, but this one's my favorite. So with psytrance, I don't really listen to it much anymore, but maybe just sometimes when I go running, because, you know, it's the right BPMs when you're doing a fast run. So yeah, I do like it from time to time. Okay. All right, so coming up to the next question. So there's some of the other types of music that I listen to. Hopefully I didn't go into too much detail, and or you enjoyed it. Okay, some albums you like but you know are bad. So I'm not talking about albums which I think are bad. For that, you can look at my response to the 10 terrible albums in your collection thread. They were ones where I know, well, I think they're bad for me personally, but it's all a matter of opinion, isn't it? But here, what I'm showing today are ones where people generally say they're bad, but I actually like them. So these albums I'm about to show, people say that they're bad, but I beg to differ. So first of all, AC/DC, Fly on the Wall. I love this album. A lot of people said it was a disappointment or a rush job. I think it's so heavy and so catchy. Great party music. Yeah, so I like this album. Also, I mentioned this album in a recent video, the dissection video, Rain Chaos. A lot of people don't like this album, as I mentioned in that video, but I think it's great because it's very hooky and catchy and memorable. So I know a lot of people like to hate on this album, but I actually enjoy it. So Dissection, Rain Chaos. And then Entombed, Wolverine Blues. I know a lot of old school fans hated this album because they thought the band was selling out because they were going in a more commercial direction, which was death and roll. But this was the first album I heard by these guys back in the day, and it's just great nostalgic memories, and I think it's really heavy and catchy, and I still love this album. So yeah, Entombed, Wolverine Blues. Up next, Turbo by Judas Priest. Again, all the Die Hard fans hated this album because it was very poppy and they started to use synth guitars and everything, but to me a good song is a good song. A couple of filler tracks on this album though, like maybe Reckless, All Fired Up, Hot for Love, I'm not a big fan of, but all the other ones I just love. So yeah, I don't care what people say, I really like this album. Also, Peter Criss's solo album. So Peter was the drummer of Kiss, of course, the Catman. Remember when the band simultaneously released solo albums in 1978? They were all widely different, and Peter's is usually the least popular because people say that they just hated it in the sense that it wasn't hard rock or heavy metal oriented. This one was sort of like big band and soul and jazz inspired with a lot of ballads, and of course he was famous for singing the song Beth. But it's quite funny, I think that a lot of the ballads on this album are much better than the song Beth, and it's probably my second favorite after Aces. I think I like it because it's different, and I remember when I first bought this album years ago, I used to listen to it like every day for that year. So really enjoy this album by the Catman, even though it's usually last in people's list. Okay, up next, Reload by Metallica. So a lot of people hate everything after the Black Album, or when they talk about bad albums, they say that this is one of them. And with the Load and Reload pairing, most people say that they prefer Load, but Load had a couple of good songs, but I also find there's a lot of filler songs. But this album here, I like pretty much every song. It's very diverse, and also at the time that this came out, I was listening to it a lot with my friends and my brother, even though I'm more, a bigger fan of the older stuff, of course. But yeah, between Load and Reload, for me, Reload all the way. Okay, and lastly, Motley Crue, Theater of Pain. So a lot of people, again, they say, including the band themselves, say this album is pure shit. I disagree. Like, it's actually my favorite. Like, Shout at the Devil, I think I've overkilled, but this has some great catchy songs. And You know, I find the least interesting songs the big hits from this, like "Smoking in the Boys' Room" and "Home Sweet Home." I've never been a fan of that song, so they don't mean much. But the songs I really like on this include "Raise Your Hands to Rock," "Louder Than Hell," "Fight for Your Rights," "Keep Your Eye on the Money." Yeah, they are rocking, underrated songs. So don't care what anyone says. I like this album. All right. How are we going for time? Not too bad. All right. And the last question we're coming up to. So, what else do you collect or other hobbies you have besides music? So, I don't really collect anything else apart from music, to be completely honest, but I used to collect a lot of DVDs, even though they've become obsolete. So, I ended up donating a whole load to charity just because it was taking up too much space, but I did keep the ones that I really like. So, I'll just show you some of my favorite DVDs. Okay, so on that topic, yeah. So firstly, I'm a huge fan of the Evil Dead trilogy and also, related shows like Ash vs. Evil Dead. So I like to collect various versions of Evil Dead. It's the greatest horror film of all time, in my opinion. So you see here, I've got 3 versions of Evil Dead, the first one. So I've kept them all. And also, yeah, 2 versions of Evil Dead 2 and 2 versions of Army of Darkness. And I also like a lot of other sort of old school horror films as well. So like some examples here, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is the original by Tobe Hooper from 1973. Also, this is an underrated classic, but if you haven't seen this, go and watch it if you like horror. House. It's just like brings back great memories for me, and I watched it the other week, still really enjoy it. Starring William Catt, it's like a comedy horror, great movie. Also, if you haven't seen this, definitely go and watch it. Dead Heat. This is like a sci-fi horror action film starring Treat Williams and Joe Piscopo. It's gory and it's sort of like a B-grade horror film, but it's hilarious thanks to Joe Piscopo. I know a lot of people say they don't like him because he's cocky, but he's so funny in this. So if you like sort of those underground B-grade movies, definitely check this out. With this movie, I know all of the dialogue back to front. That's sad. Also, another one of my favorite movies of all time, Big Trouble in Little China, just a classic. If you haven't seen this, go and watch it. Brilliant. Again, Conan the Barbarian, I kept this one. Just such a great epic movie. I know the acting's bad, but it's so atmospheric, so I just love it. Also, another one of my favorite movies, Gladiator. Yeah, I just can't get bored of this movie, starring Russell Crowe. Fantastic. I'm sure everyone knows it. Mad Max as well. This is the original 1979 version starring Mel Gibson. To me, it's the best of all of them. You know, the one with the gang with Toe Cutter and Bubba Zanetti and everything. Again, I can't get bored of this movie, so just a classic. And I also like a lot of... So I've shown mostly horror and action, but I also like a lot of drama movies, ancient world movies, and also a lot of foreign movies, actually. So I know a lot of people don't like reading subtitles. For me, it's not a problem. This is one of my favorites that I'd recommend if you like foreign movies. This is the Baader Meinhof complex, so about, the terrorist group, Baader Meinhof, and I definitely do not side with what they were doing, but it's just a gripping film and so intense. So if you're interested in foreign movies, I'd recommend this one. It's a good one, the Baader Meinhof complex. Yeah, so I collect DVDs, not so much anymore. And apart from other hobbies that I have, some of you might know this, I really enjoy being in nature. So, going to the beach, going to the forest, and actually I've just recently moved to that kind of environment. So it's good where I am now because it's like a combination of beach, forest, and mountains. So I like to do a lot of hiking when I can. And my favorite form of exercise is running, as some of you may know. So I like to just, run and listen to music. It's a great release. And yeah, I enjoy it. Just a good way to clear your head. And because I live near the sea now, I also got into swimming, and never used to be, because I found lap swimming just mind-numbing. Like lap swimming in a pool I thought was incredibly boring, but now I do lap swimming in the sea, and I don't want to sound like a hippie, but when you're doing it immersed in nature, it's a much better feeling. And I also it's a form of meditation because you can clear your head without listening to music all the time. So yeah, I've got into swimming recently. It probably goes without saying that I'm into travel when I can, especially after 2 years with COVID preventing that. So yeah, as I said earlier, this year I went to Norway, Finland, and England. Who knows where next, but travel, yeah, it's a great experience for me. And yeah, that's about it. Like languages, I used to study German actually, so I do have a knowledge of German, but it's become rusty over the years because I haven't practiced much since I stopped studying it. But I sort of know enough to get by in German speaking countries if someone can't speak English, because often they speak English so well anyway. But yeah, I used to study German, and now I'm actually studying Thai, the Thai language. So that's difficult because it's a tonal language, but it's also really fun to learn, like a completely non-European language. So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed my responses. I don't want to keep you any longer, so I'll leave it there. But Dennis, once again, congratulations on reaching 1,000 subscribers. It's really well deserved. You have a great channel and keep it up. And if you haven't checked out his channel, I'll leave a link in the description. And if you're interested, maybe get involved in this competition. I found it a lot of fun, and I've really enjoyed watching other people's responses. So I'll leave it there, guys, and I'll see you in the next video, which will be sometime soon. So take care of yourselves and until then, and I'll see you later. Cheers.